this evening I'm going to be talking about the mother's relationship with the unborn baby, and I'm going to focus in on some of the key concepts that have been developed over the past couple of decades, really. I'm going to summarize what the empirical evidence is and think about the implications for practice. So this is what my paper looks like. So I'm going to start by exploring some of the concepts that have been used to assess the relationship with the unborn baby. And Lisa, if I'm going too fast, perhaps somebody could just put that in the chat and you could communicate that to me, in which case I'll slow down a bit, because I'm inclined to gain speed as I go along, and I'm not sure everybody here is going to have English as their first language. So I'm then going to talk about evidence about the prevalence, stability, and some of the factors that have been found to be associated or predictive of these constructs. I'm then going to go on and talk about what the evidence says in terms of the concordance or the association between these constructs and later outcomes in the postnatal period. And I'm going to focus in particular on the parenting and the parent-infant relationship, and also the infant's attachment status. And then I'm going to conclude by saying something briefly about what I think the implications are of this, this fairly large body of evidence now in terms of what works and what we should be doing. So before I start with the concepts, I just wanted to paint an overall picture, if you like, of where we're up to in terms of our understanding. And I wanted to start with the prototype hypothesis, which really goes back to the very beginning in terms of Bowlby's theory of attachment. So if we just remind ourselves about the concept of internal working models and the fact that these are mental representations of our relationship with our primary caregiver. And the key defining feature of these is that they really are a template for all of our future relationships. So these early relationships with our caregivers are built up into a map, if you like, that enable us to predict or to anticipate what future relationships with other people outside the home will be like. So the prototype hypothesis really very much builds on this, because it says that the parent's attachment status, in terms of what we've just talked about, the internal working models that are built up, influence the infant's attachment status, which is, pretty phenomenal. So the earliest study on this was conducted back in the 1990s. So Peter Fonagy in 1991 did this very nice study in which he looked at the attachment of parents to be. So these were 100 mothers who were expecting their first child, and then 96 of these were followed up when their infants were born. And so they assessed the attachment status of these adults, and then they measured the attachment of the infants. And what they found was a significant concordance between the two. So parents who were securely attached were much more likely to have infants who were securely attached, and parents who were insecurely attached were likely to have infants insecurely attached. And that story played out 75% of the time. And that very early finding was very much confirmed. So we have this very nice systematic review and meta-analysis by Van Isendorn, who's contributed, masses to this field, who he pulled together all of the studies and really confirmed that finding, that around 75% of cases, the parent's attachment status predicts the infant's attachment status. And you can see this here in this little diagram that I've put at the bottom. So how do we get from maternal representations about their own attachment to infant attachment? And the answer, as will, many of you will be aware, is parental sensitivity in interaction with infants. And going back again to the 1990s, we've got this very nice systematic review that again was done by De Wolf and Van Isendorn. 21 studies that really confirm that it is parental sensitivity, particularly at times that the infant's distressed, that is strongly associated with the infant's attachment security. One of the key findings of this systematic review, though, was that accounted for only around a third of the variance. And so this suggested that parental sensitivity was one, but not the only factor that played an important role in terms of infant attachment status. And there's been a significant body of research that's been conducted in the interim period, and I think maybe parental reflective functioning is one of the key factors that has been found to be important alongside parental sensitivity. And just to remind people, this refers to the capacity of the parents to think about their own and their child's behaviours in terms of the child's internal mental states. So this reflects the ability of a parent to understand a child's behaviour in terms of what the child might be feeling. And there's very nice body of research now that shows that the better the parent's capacity for reflective functioning or mentalising is, the better the quality of the caregiving and the more securely attached the child is. And I don't have time to talk about this third study because this isn't the focus of my paper today, but this is a very nice systematic review that was conducted by Eggers, and Elizabeth Mines is one of the co-authors on it. And this was a meta-analysis that looked at the relationship between parental mentalisation and sensitivity as predictors of infant-parent attachment. And it's very nice complex analysis that shows that mentalisation is both a direct and an indirect, is it both directly and indirectly associated with infant attachment status, the indirect pathway being parental sensitivity. So that really just confirms that these are the core constructs, if you like, in terms of this relationship. So you can see that depicted above in the top diagram here. Maternal attachment prenatal, or at any point parental mentalisation, it's associated with that, and that is associated with infant attachment security. But since then, we've begun to realise that there's a piece of the jigsaw missing, and that's what I want to focus on this evening, or I think this afternoon, in terms of where you're at, which is the representations of the baby in the prenatal period. So I just want to unpack that a little bit, and I want to start by thinking about the concepts that have been developed in order to assess this relationship in the past, probably since the 1980s. So I've summarised the key concepts here. The first one is maternal fetal bonding or attachment, I think, as it's more popularly known. The second is maternal representations, and the third, which is another form of maternal representation, is maternal reflective functioning and mind-mindedness. So if we start with the first of these, maternal fetal attachment was really developed, the notion of this was really identified in the 1980s, as you'll see on the next slide, and really refers fundamentally, I think, to the mother's sense of emotional closeness to to her unborn baby, as is demonstrated by her thoughts, her feelings, and her behaviours. And there's been some debate really as to whether this is a uni or a multi-dimensional construct, with various schools of thought suggesting different things at different times. I think the key thing that we need to bear in mind here is the fact that maternal fetal attachment is not the same as infant mother attachment. So infant mother attachment is the activation of the infant's attachment system when they're in need of comfort. This concept really refers to a part of the parental caregiving system, which is the desire to protect the unborn baby. And I've put bonding in brackets because many of us thought of it as maternal fetal bonding before the concept of maternal fetal attachment was developed. So as you can see here, this really originated back in the 1980s, and it originated with work of nurses and epidemiologists. So Cranley was a nurse. She originally defined maternal fetal attachment as the extent to which women engage in behaviours that represent an affiliation, an interaction with their unborn child. This then really developed with the work of Muller, who really did what happened in the field of attachment, which is the movement from a focus on behavioural aspects of attachment to the representational aspects. So Muller really proposed a slightly different model of attachment in pregnancy, suggesting that expectant mothers' experiences with their own mother, which is where we started at in the early slides, lead to the development of internal representations, which then influence subsequent attachments to family, partner, and friends. So that led to both of those theorists produced tools to measure the maternal fetal attachment relationship. And then most recently, Condon defined prenatal attachment as simply the emotional tie or bond which normally develops between the pregnant parent and her unborn infant. And so this was the most recent scale that was developed by Condon to assess this construct, the maternal antenatal attachment scale. You can see here it's a 19-item self-report questionnaire. There is also a PASS, which is a paternal antenatal attachment scale, very, very similar. It's one of a suite of measures of attachment in both mothers and fathers, and is used primarily to assess the quality of the relationship in terms of overt thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and behaviours of the mothers towards the fetus. And it's got two subscales. So one of these looks at the quality of the attachment, and the second looks at the intensity of the preoccupation. And so these subscales really are looking at the mother's affective or emotional experience of the unborn child, and then also the intensity, the amount of time that she spends thinking or dreaming or talking to the unborn baby. So just shown you here, this is an example that you can see here. These are a few questions from the maternal antenatal attachment scale. So you can see this is one of 3 of 19 items. So this asks the mother, over the past 2 weeks, I have thought about or been preoccupied with the baby inside me almost all of the time, very frequently, occasionally, or not at all. And then over the past 2 weeks, when I've spoken about or thought about the baby inside me, I got emotional feelings, which were weak, fairly weak, in between strong and weak, fairly strong and very strong, and so on and so forth. So you can see these are the sorts of ways in which those two dimensions are being tapped into.
Jane, there's just a question about at what gestational age these are administered.
Most of them are administered in the third trimester.
Thanks.
Yeah. So the MORS is another example of one of these measures. This is a 14-item tool that's got two domains. One of them is assessing the warmth, and the other is assessing the mother's perceptions of feelings about invasiveness. And so on a similar sort of 5-point Likert scale to the ones that we use here, this questionnaire asks the mother about how much she feels her baby smiles at her, likes doing things with her, talks to her, likes her, laughs, likes to please her, is affectionate, or on the invasiveness level is, feels annoying, irritating, wants too much attention, gets moody, dominates, cries for no obvious reason, or winds her up. So those are two examples of the first type of measure that's been developed to assess the relationship with the unborn baby. I now want to move on to the second concept, which is representations, and these really are very much they're very much more like the second model that I referred to earlier in terms of Muller's development of the early work. So these really build on Bowlby's concept of the internal working model. And so we have two types of maternal representation, the ones that I referred to earlier, which is the mother's representations of her own attachment, which we're not going to be discussing further here. I've talked about where that fits in the overall trajectory, but what I really want to be focusing on here is the second bullet point, which refers to the prenatal representations of baby, self and others. And there are a range of tools that have been developed to assess this, both self-report and interview-based, as you will see in a moment. So in this case, the prenatal mental representations really include both conscious and unconscious aspects of the mother's representation. So this is fully consistent, if you like, with with Bowlby's notion of internal working models. So these are the projections, the dreams, the attributions, the fantasies that really go back, if you like, to the parents' childhood attachment experiences. And we know that during pregnancy, women begin to reorganize their representations of themselves and their relationships with their mother, or they're thinking about their relationship with the mother and the baby. And this typically begins in the second trimester of pregnancy, which is the point at which the mother begins to sense the fetal movements and begins, if you like, to get a sense of the baby as somebody that is separate from herself. So I've listed here some of the assessment techniques. So there's a self-report tool that I haven't seen used very much. The majority of the assessments that are done of maternal representations are done using the WMCI, which is here, which is the working model of the child interview, which developed by Zena and Benoit back in 1995. It was originally developed as a research tool, and as far as I'm aware, is pretty well mostly used as a research tool, although it can be used clinically. And I thought it was worthwhile just saying a little bit more about it, because a lot of the research that's been done in terms of prevalence and stability of the relationship with the unborn baby has been done using this tool. So it's an hour-long interview, and during this time, the parent's asked to describe his or her emotional reactions during the pregnancy. They're asked to talk about what they feel the infant's personality and development has been like, the characteristics of the relationship with the infant, any perceived or anticipated difficulties with the infant's characteristics, their reactions to the infant behaviour, and so on and so forth. And then these recordings are classified, if you like, or rated using this rating scale. So they're assessed in terms of the richness of the perceptions, openness to change, intensity of the involvement with the baby, the coherence, sensitivity in terms of caregiving, acceptance of the infant, perceptions around difficulties with the infant, and fear for infant safety. And that produces 3 overall classifications. So women who are classified as balanced, on the whole, tell very rich, very detailed, coherent stories about their experiences of their pregnancies. They're able to think about this baby both in positive and negative terms, and they have lots of thoughts about what this baby might be like, his characteristics, and so on and so forth. So you get a sense that these women have a real sense of this baby as a distinct individual. Then there are mothers who are classified as disengaged, and this group of women seem less involved, if you like. So there's a greater distance. They're more uninterested in the fetus. They tend to have they tend to spend less time thinking about the unborn baby, thinking about what their characteristics might be like, talking to them. And their narratives really, when you ask them some of these questions, tend to be very brief. And then the final category is a group of women who are classified as distorted, and these interviews are distorted in the sense that the content really devalues or is excessively negative or self-referential or role reversed in terms of the infant. So this group of women tend to express very, a lot of intrusive thoughts about their own history of being parented, and often view the baby as an extension of themselves or their partners. So those are the 3 categories in relation to maternal representations. And then this is the final construct. And this construct really also relates to the second category, maternal representations, but I wanted to flag these up as distinct because they're quite distinct concepts, and they're very much out there, if you like. And so maternal reflective functioning and mindedness are both concepts that relate to the idea of mentalization. So they're the operationalization, if you like, of the concept of mentalization, and they both refer to the extent to which a parent is able to understand an infant or a child's behavior in terms of their internal emotional states. So just to give you an example of that, one mum that I was talking to described her baby who was crying very intensively as, she said, she's doing this to annoy me. So, that really reflected her inability to understand that baby's distress as a sign of, distress of some sort, that they're feeling lonely or hungry or tired. And so you can see why, when you have that reduced capacity to mentalize or to think to have reflective functioning about the infant, the baby's behavior becomes much more persecutory than it would be if you were able to understand, that the baby was behaving like that because they're distressed. And so that explains, if you like, the association with the parenting behavior. So mind-mindedness, again, this was a concept that was developed by Elizabeth Mines and really refers to the tendency to view the unborn infant as an individual with a separate mind, rather than merely a concrete blob, if you like, that has specific needs that have to be satisfied. And the pregnancy interview is one of the tools that are used in the research to assess this aspect of the relationship with the baby. So it's semi-structured clinical interview, quite long, 39 questions and probes. And as we said earlier, it's administered during the third trimester to assess a variety of aspects of the mother's view in terms of her emotional experience with the pregnancy itself, her expectations and her fantasies regarding her future relationship with the child. So those are the core constructs, if you like, in terms of the way in which the mother's relationship with the unborn baby is currently being assessed and measured. So what I want to do in this next part of the paper is just to share with you what the research tells us about how prevalent, how stable those constructs are, those estimates of the mother's relationship with the unborn baby, and what the research tells us about the factors that predict that sort of those constructs or that relationship. So there isn't a massive body of research in terms of prevalence, and the limited amount of research that we have mostly comes from, or is mostly based on the working model of the child interview, which I just talked about. But it does produce, these studies do produce findings that are consistent really with what we would expect in terms of our understanding about the prevalence of secure and insecure attachment in adults. So one study conducted in 2005 that was done in a population sample showed that around half of the women had balanced representations, with 30% being disengaged and 19% having distorted representations. And then a more recent study conducted by Huth Box showed something very similar. So 53% balanced, 29% disengaged, and 18% distorted. And this is very consistent with with population measures of attachment generally. So we, 2/3 of the population are securely attached, and the remainder insecure or disorganized. So we don't have very much research assessing prevalence, but I think what we do have is helpful. We can, of course, turn to proxy measures, and one of the key proxy measures that we might use is antenatal depression. We know that antenatal depression has a fairly high prevalence of around 20%. This was the most recent estimate from a global review. And the factors that are associated with that is history of depression, lack of social support, being single, separated or divorced, an unplanned pregnancy, unemployment, violence, smoking, and so on and so forth. So those are the factors that were associated with antenatal depression. So that's just another way that we might, if we wanted to, to have an estimate of how prevalent, disengaged or unbalanced representations are, using the prevalence of antenatal depression would be another way we could think about it. In terms of stability, so this is as saying, these are estimates in the antenatal period, but what is the continuity between the antenatal and postnatal period? And this, again, is research that's been done using the working model of the child interview. And this showed a pretty high consistency with around 2/3 of the women who had balanced representations in pregnancy also being balanced still in the postnatal period, and 62% of women who were non-balanced still were non-balanced postnatally. This shows a fairly high level of stability, but it does also suggest that there is some shift, and you would expect that to be the case. So you might expect women who were balanced antenatally, who had a traumatic delivery, to shift to being unbalanced in the postnatal period. And I think, I've underlined the bit that for me is key, which is they're finding that the women who were unbalanced in pregnancy, but who then became balanced postnatally, were still less sensitive and more disengaged and less warm in their interaction than women who were balanced at both time points. And I think this really, points to the importance of us working in the antenatal period with women who potentially are unbalanced, because, even if by chance they shift to being balanced in and of themselves, it's still not as good as it would have been if we'd worked with them in pregnancy. So then finally, just to say something about the predictors of maternal fetal attachment. So this was a fairly recent systematic review of 131 studies, which is pretty impressive. There were 123 correlates or factors that were identified, but 3 that were consistently associated with mother-to-infant bonding quality. The first of these was the duration of gestation at assessment was associated with it. So that's really reflecting the fact that later on in pregnancy the measure is taken, then the more likely they are to be there to be a relationship. Depressive symptoms were negatively associated with postnatal mother-to-infant bonding quality, and the mother-infant bonding quality earlier in pregnancy or postpartum was positively associated with mother-to-infant bonding quality later in time. So this review also showed that the relationship was unrelated to demographic factors, so education, age, marital status really didn't play much of a role at all, fertility treatment, fetal defects, or whether the pregnancy was planned or unplanned, which is quite interesting, I think. And I think consistent with this are the findings of this second systematic review here by Rowley, this final bullet point here, which was again a very large review of 41 studies, which showed that treatment for depression can improve maternal fetal attachment. So that again suggests that depression in antenatal depression is a significant factor associated with the relationship, as you might anticipate. So now I just want to go on and say something about we've got all of these constructs. We've looked at their prevalence, we've looked at their stability over time, we've looked at the factors that predict them. Why are these important? What is the association between these measures of the relationship with the unborn baby and later infant outcomes? So this is just to remind you of where we started at, and I got here this second part that says, you know, maternal representations of the unborn baby, and that's the part that I want us to focus on really when we're thinking about the evidence in this next section. And there are three, well, there's probably more than this, but I'm particularly interested in terms of the association between these measures of maternal fetal attachment and parent-infant interaction. There's a group of studies that look at these measures of maternal fetal attachment and infant attachment. And then there's one or two very fascinating studies that have measured the mediating role of maternal representations with later parenting and later parent-infant attachment. There is a broader body of evidence that's looked at the relationship between these measures of maternal fetal attachment and child development more generally, but I haven't attempted to summarise that evidence here. So I apologise for the slight density of this slide, but what this evidence is showing us is that there is a significant relationship between a positive maternal fetal attachment and the postnatal parenting that is observed. So this first recent systematic review, 2021, that had 19 studies in it, 16 of these studies found a positive relationship between prenatal attachment and parent to infant attachment, and 3 highlighted a negative association between antenatal attachment and postpartum bonding disorders. And interestingly, these results were found in both women and men, although the studies focusing on men are considerably fewer, as you might expect, and it included both normative or population samples and at-risk pregnancies, and it included a range of different ways of assessing the maternal fetal relationship. So a fairly robust evidence base there. And this really confirmed some of the earlier findings from other systematic reviews here, which I'm not going to go through, but you can see a broad range of evidence in terms of impact on various aspects of postnatal sensitivity, caregiving, attachment, perceptions about the infant temperament, and so on and so forth. This slide summarises the evidence about the maternal-infant relationship and the postnatal interaction and attachment quality. So we've got this very nice systematic review that was conducted by Foley and Hughes in 2018, and she brought together 14 studies that were that included measures of both maternal thoughts and feelings. So she included studies that had measured the relationship with the unborn baby using both the first set of constructs that I talked about, which is the maternal fetal attachment, and the second set of constructs, which is the representations. And again, she showed a fairly robust association between these measures of attachment in the antenatal period and observed parent-child interaction quality in the postnatal period. And then we've got these a few individual studies that measure not only the parent-infant relationship, but the infant attachment, which is further down the line at 1 year. And you can see here 60 to 74% concordance, and this very nice additional study that added these components that were really aimed at assessing whether the mother was disorganized. And this really showed that mothers who were disorganized also had infants who were disorganized. And then I just wanted to flag up this one study here that's conducted fairly recently, published in 2022, that looked at mind-mindedness in pregnancy. So this was done at 7 months. You can see they followed 93 low-risk couples across the transition to parenthood and measured maternal mind-mindedness in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy and at 4 months. And what they showed was that prenatal mind-mindedness in both parents was associated with more frequent infant-initiated conversations at 7 months, while prenatal mind-mindedness was also associated with more mother and father-initiated conversations. So again, this is very consistent, really, with the other findings that highlight the importance of parental representations or mentalizing in the prenatal period. So this then is the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, which we've now got here in red, prenatal representations of the baby. And I just wanted to flag up this rather nice study by Madigan that was conducted in 2016. It was a longitudinal study of 84 mother-infant dyads. It looked at the mother's AAI in pregnancy. It also looked at the mother's WMCI, so it's looking at the mother's representations of her own attachment. It's looking at her representations of her infant, and then it's looking at infant attachment in the postnatal period. And this really was a very nice study that showed that the prototype hypothesis was completely supported. So there was a high correspondence between the mother's attachment status and her representations of her baby. But the important thing here is that this mediation analysis showed that the mother's representations really fully accounted for the association between her attachment status and the infant attachment. And I think that's really key, because when I came into this field and I saw this research that showed that maternal attachment prenatally predicted infant attachment postnatally, I was thinking, that's all well and good, but what are the implications for practice? We can't go around assessing the adult attachment status, and we also can't spend time assessing the infant attachment status. So we really very badly needed to have an understanding about some of these mediatory constructs or variables about which we can do something. So in a sense, we can do something in the sense that we can measure them and we can intervene to possibly change them. So the final part of my paper, and I think I've probably just got 5 or 10 minutes left to do this in, is just to say a little bit about what I think the implications are in terms of what we've talked about this evening for practice. So there are a range of measures out there that can be used to assess the parent's relationship with the baby, and I just wanted to categorize these for you here so that you can see that the 2 key approaches are what we call parent-reported outcome measures, or PROMs, which are self-report tools of one sort or another, and the clinician-reported outcome measures known as CROMs, which involve the use of interviews or observations. And of course, mostly we use these PROMs because they're easy to administer and score. One of the problems with them is that they really rely on the parent having some sort of insight about their relationship with the baby. These clinician reported outcome measures are much more time intensive and in terms of both their administration and in terms of their assess rating, but they're also more accurate. So really, I think the evidence suggests the potential benefit of both universal and targeted interventions to support the relationship with the unborn baby. You know, we spend a lot of time working out how to address difficulties in the postnatal period, but if we actually moved back in time and focused on, you know, what the mother was feeling in the prenatal period, we potentially could, you know, we could potentially bring about change, you know, before the baby's born. So you know, my thinking here really is about the need for a case identification or screening strategy of some sort, and skilling up of the workforce in terms of the use of techniques and methods that have been shown to improve that relationship. And one of the ways in which we're thinking about the screening process in the UK currently is the use of a brief tool of some sort, or even just a few prompts or questions to the mother that can then be followed up with a more rigorous assessment where there's evidence that there might be concerns. So I'm not going to go through this slide other than to just say it's here, and it flags up some of the best tools that are out there for assessing the relationship. I really just wanted to conclude by drawing your attention to some of the recent evidence about the different models of working, both at a population and a targeted level. So there's a very well-developed evidence base now in relation to some of these methods of working that I've listed here. So ultrasound scans, there's a fairly slowly developing, I should say, really, evidence base in relation to the use of scans per se, and a body of literature developing that's looking at different types of scans, so comparing 2D with 3D and 4D. And this evidence summarized really suggests that the ultrasound examinations can increase maternal fetal attachment, but that of course depends upon the way it's done. So the parents who get a detailed explanation of the ultrasound findings, as well as a post session debriefing, were much more likely to have a better maternal fetal relationship. And there appears to be no difference in terms of the ultrasound imaging modality. So it doesn't really matter whether it's 2D, 3D, or 4D. That doesn't appear to impact the improvement in the outcome. Scanning plus other guidance. So I just wanted to really flag up what I think the key message from all of that is, which is that, you just scanning per se isn't going to do it. It needs, it needs something additional that's about helping the parent to mentalize, if you like, or to understand or to get a sense of the baby as an individual, a separate person. And that's really what these interventions are endeavouring to do. And this very nice brief intervention called Baby Chat. It's a single session. It's a group antenatal intervention that incorporates the viewing of one 4D scan, and really focuses that the whole of the session is focused on helping the parent to begin to view and explore their thoughts about this baby, what this baby might be feeling, what this baby might be going to be like, like. So there's a whole range of activities that are focused on promoting the capacity of the parent for reflective functioning, and some very early evidence that shows a fairly good medium effect size in terms of antenatal attachment to the unborn baby. So the evidence isn't strong at the moment, but I think if somebody say to me, what's good practice, this sort of model of working would be it. Then there are these fetal awareness interventions that again are focused on helping the parent become more conscious of the fetus, and really focus on supporting the parent to do things such as counting the fetal movements. And you can see 2 RCTs that have found very contradictory results, and it sort of takes me back to what I said in relation to the earlier slides, which is, fetal counting, a scan on its own isn't going to be enough. It needs some sort of intervention that's about helping the parent to think about this baby as a separate being. Educational interventions, well, these really are focused on doing that. So that they have 4 potentially weekly sessions focused on the importance of attachment and the mother's relationship with the unborn baby. Both of these, the only 2 RCTs that were conducted were done in Iran with significant methodological limitations, but again, early evidence of an improvement in the relationship, as you might expect. And then music therapy, a similar message. Music therapy per se doesn't really seem to do it. Again, you can see that there are some, from this second bullet point here, there are some improvements in oxytocin, cortisol, but no improvements in maternal fetal attachment. And again, I think it's because of that lack of additional intervention, which is focused on supporting the parent to mentalize. And then I just wanted to say something briefly about some of the targeted prenatal interventions that are out there. These are preparation for parenthood and specialist home visiting programs. There's fairly well developed evidence base around these preparation for parenting programs. They're group-based, they begin in pregnancy, they continue into the postnatal period, mostly delivered by 2 specially trained practitioners, and mostly targeting parents who are vulnerable. And I've listed here some of the UK-based programs that you can look at on the NSPCC website and the Mellow Bumps or Mellow Babies website if you want to learn a bit more about them. We still have limited evidence of their effectiveness, but the evidence that we have suggests that they are promising. And then finally, this Minding the Baby, which is an intensive US-based home visiting program that again involves working with women for whom there is trauma and a derailed attachment history. It's intensive home visiting program, really focused on helping the mother to think about her own experience of being parented and the way in which that's influencing her experiences in the here and now with her own baby, but it begins in pregnancy. So this very nice RCT showed that there was a reduction in the likelihood of families being referred to child protection services, and an increase in the number of children who were securely attached, and less numbers being disorganized at 1 year of age. So yeah, that's just a summary of what that evidence tells us. So in terms of my key messages, then we've got these very nice constructs that have led to the development of these rather nice tools to assess the relationship with the unborn baby. We've got some evidence about the prevalence of problematic attachment. It appears to be, there's a significant proportion of the population of women who, don't have a good attachment with the baby in the antenatal period, and some evidence that that's stable over time. And that's important because it predicts the interactions and the attachment in the postnatal period. And I think the implications for practice are that we need to be working to identify women that might benefit from additional support in the antenatal period, and providing some of the methods of working that I've talked about.